What is going on, everyone? Hope everybody is all good. So, hot topic today, or hot take again. It's a very controversial topic on Twitter. Everyone gets butthurt over this. I know there's a lot of talk about barbells and all this stuff. The optimal training, all that sort of stuff. But the question that always comes up is about conventional deadlifts, and should I conventional deadlift? Should I have it in my training now? Coming from, I've got a pretty neutral stance on this because, as I say, I've got a background in powerlifting. I stepped on the platform and competed 4 times. I done conventional deadlifts every week for near on a decade. Over the last 6 months to a year, I haven't really been doing conventional deadlifts as much. So there's a lot of nuance to this, and it's not just a simple yes or no answer. And I know Twitter doesn't do well with nuance, but that's what I wanted to provide with this video. Is just a bit of an in-depth look at should you conventional deadlift? Is it right for you and your goals? And just to get you thinking about it. And just as we know, there's no must-do exercise. You don't have to do any exercise in the gym at all. Anyone who says that is talking absolute garbage. So let's get into it. What is the good and what is the bad about a conventional deadlift? So let's get into that first, okay? So first thing, the good. What are the good things about a conventional deadlift? Now, I know for me, it's the most fun lift in the gym, and it is for a lot of people. It's my favourite lift. There is nothing like just going in the gym and loading up some heavy shit on a barbell and lifting it off the floor, obviously with good technique, and then seeing yourself getting stronger over time. That is very, very addicting, and again, that's one of the reasons why I'd done it for near on a decade every week. It was just brilliant to see your numbers and your strength improving and going up over time. It's one of the most addictive feelings in the world, and I get that. And a big thing with training is adherence. If people like to do that, and that's what gets them in the gym, I'm all for it. So it's one of the first reasons what's good about deadlifts, that people really do enjoy it. And picking stuff off the floor transfers to real life, or should we say the functional gurus. Now, I don't believe in all this the functional bullshit that a lot of people preach, but being able to bend over and be able to pick something heavy off the floor, I don't think that's a bad skill to have when it comes to real life, because just being able to pick stuff off the floor and bulletproof your back, that's one of the big areas why a lot of people have back pain in modern society. Lower backs, glutes, everything is just weak. So being able to pick stuff off the floor and be strong in that position, it's just gonna lead to some longevity, and you're just gonna be healthier over time. Again, I'm gonna get into that later in the video. There's different things we can do. We're not just limited to conventional deadlifts, but it's a good movement which transfers over to day-to-day life. It's also, as I say, brilliant for postural improvements. Now, what do a lot of people do in modern society? Everyone is sat at a desk, sat in a cubicle like this on the computer, rounded shoulders, kyphotic posture, weak upper back. They sit on their arse all day, shorten glutes, shorten hamstrings, everything on the posterior chain is just weak. Again, I couldn't think of, there's not many better exercises that's going to help improve posture than a good old deadlift off the floor. So I think that's one of the benefits of it. Then the other big one is strength athletes need to practice the lift because of specificity. Whether you're a powerlifter or a strongman, you are going to compete with that lift, so you probably need to practice it. That just makes the most sense. So those type of people who are powerlifters, strongman, strength athletes in general, you're going to practice the conventional deadlift. Of course you are, because again, it's in the rules of your sport. So it would be stupid to never ever conventional deadlift and then turn up to competition day and then just try and conventional deadlift. That's just stupid. So, and plus the final good, of course you're still going to build some muscle with a conventional deadlift. If you take a beginner who is only deadlifting one plate either side, so 135 or 60 kilos, whatever, if someone comes in the gym, that's what they deadlift on their first day, and then a year later, they're deadlifting 365 or whatever, 160 kilo for set to 5, set to 6. Of course some muscle is going to have been added there. There's no ways around that. So we can't just meme ourselves into thinking that everything about the conventional deadlift is bad, because it's not. It is a good lift. But again, there's nuance to it, and you need to understand the reasoning behind it. Okay, so that's the good. Now the bad. What is the bad about a conventional deadlift? Let me move my face over here. So this is where the nuance comes in, and this is one of the reasons why I switched it out over the last year or so. As you get really strong, it causes a ton of fatigue. Now again, people love to say that the deadlift is the best exercise because you use all of the muscles in your body, you use everything. That's also one of the reasons why it causes a ton of fatigue. Now, what you need to realise with the deadlift as well, it uses every muscle in the body, but it doesn't develop any of them very well. It doesn't fully lengthen or fully stretch any of the muscles under load very well. So it's like it's one of those movements where it's given everything a shit stimulus, and then the stimulus as a whole, it's huge, and the fatigue that brings is it's not worth it, I'd say, as you get very stronger. Now, as I said, deadlifting 300 pounds is different to 600 pounds. If you're within your first 1 to 3 years in the gym and you're still, you're deadlifting around 200, 300, 400 pounds, that's going to affect you a lot differently than someone who has to be using 500, 600, 700 pounds, just because of the overall load being used and the systemic fatigue. Again, as I say, 600, 700 pounds being loaded on the spine is going to affect fatigue a lot different than 300 pounds. That's just a fact. That is no shade being thrown at anyone who isn't as strong, but that's just the facts. That's what happens when you get stronger. You have to be a little bit more cautious about how you're going to program certain exercises. So, as I spoke about, the poor stimulus to fatigue ratio, and it's not just how that will affect your actual training session on the day. A heavy deadlift, I can speak from experience, when you've done a very heavy deadlift session, that negatively impacts a couple of days after your training day. The following day, you will feel wiped. The best description I give to this, and people who've been at this level and have experienced this themselves, they will tell you this. When you have a heavy deadlift session and you push things, you sort of feel the next day like you have a hangover. You feel excessive fatigue, and then you try and train the next day, and it's never a good session, just because the fatigue from that session, it hits you that hard. Now, obviously, you can get into programming and have rest days and manipulate all that stuff, but a heavy deadlift session will impact other areas of your training, and that's where smart programming comes in. But again, it's a lift which it gives off a ton of fatigue when you get strong, and that's what you need to be very cautious of. It's also not the best developer of the glutes and hamstrings in comparison to other movements, which I will get into later in the video. Why is it not the best developer? Well, at no point in the movement does it put the glutes or hamstrings in a fully lengthened position under load. And now that's one of the most powerful ways and a powerful stimulus to grow a muscle, is to put it in a fully lengthened position under load. Now, we don't do that with any of the muscles really with a deadlift. If you look at a conventional deadlift, you're going to get some hamstring development and some glute development from it, of course. Your back has to work isometrically, so nothing is getting fully stretched or fully loaded in a fully stretched position there. And everything else, biceps, triceps, pecs, delts, nothing gets worked on a deadlift or fully stretched. So again, it's one of those, it's what I said at the start, it's a movement which it may incorporate a lot of muscles, but it doesn't give any of those muscles a good stimulus. It just brings a lot of fatigue about it. Okay, so that's the bad with a deadlift. So what do we do with this information? So if you are a strength athlete, as I say, you need to keep doing deadlifts to adhere to specificity. There's no way around that. That's the way you chose to train for the demands of your sport. So you have to keep doing conventional deadlifts. You can sub them out for a couple of months and do other variations, but at some point in your training year, you're always going to come back to conventional deadlifts. That's just a given. So also, if you really like to deadlift, and that keeps you going in the gym, even if you are strong, if you're aware that it's going to fatigue you and it's going to bleed over into other areas of your training, and it may not be the most optimal thing for you to do, if you're fully aware of that and you don't care, and you're aware of the downsides, you keep doing it. You do what you want. No one is going to judge you or think you're an idiot. That is your decision. If that gets you in the gym and you love to deadlift, you keep doing it. Okay. However, if you are trying to get as jacked as possible, probably in the smartest way without any of the extra unnecessary fatigue. Let's say you have bodybuilding goals in mind, or genuinely you are just interested in getting as jacked as possible and you don't care about deadlifts. This one's for you, the next slide. So what can we do? There's better options. Now, this is the path that I've took over the last 6 months to a year. A lot more stiff leg deadlifts and Romanian deadlifts. So why am I picking them? Well, we fully lengthen the prime movers of the glutes and hamstrings under load. So when it comes to actually building muscle, I get it. If you're any bodybuilder who's interested in building their glutes and hamstrings should have some sort of stiff leg deadlift or Romanian deadlift, whether that be with a straight bar, a trap bar, even a machine type thing, whatever. You should have some sort of stiff leg or Romanian deadlift in your program. As I say, not many people, when you get very strong, if their goal is to be the best bodybuilder or be as jacked as possible, not many are going to use conventional deadlifts because of the fatigue that they bring. So the best options are stiff leg deadlifts and Romanian deadlifts. Now, why are they the best options? Again, as I mentioned first, you put the glutes and hamstrings under a fully stretched position under load, which is, again, big stimulus for growth. We can't use as much weight with these movements because, again, we are put in a poorly leveraged position because of the way the mechanics of the movement is. So if we can't use as much weight, we can still get the exact same stimulus as we can with a conventional deadlift, but with the fatigue is lower, so it improves the stimulus to fatigue ratio. Where if you have a conventional deadlift, we get this, a subpar stimulus, and then we get all of this fatigue up here. With Romanian deadlifts and stiff legs, we get a very good very good stimulus up here, and the fatigue is all the way down here. So it's a no-brainer. So it won't beat you up as much, and it won't negatively affect other areas of your training as much. I'm going to get into that in the next slide. And also, the big thing I always see is, especially from like the strength culture, or people who are heavily attached to a conventional deadlift, they think that, well, if you just want to get a better deadlift, just deadlift. Now, while that is true and specificity is very, very important, what's two of the best exercises which are very, very specific to the deadlift and I'm going to carry over to it probably better than any other movements out there? It's going to be the stiff leg and the Romanian deadlifts. Now, you're telling me if you stop conventional deadlifting for a year and all you've done was stiff leg deadlifts and Romanian deadlifts, and you derived your numbers up, you took all of your poundages up across the board on those movements. Let's say when you first started, you were deadlifting stiff leg deadlifts 160 kilo for 6. Now over the next year, if you took that to 200 kilo for 6, you're telling me that is not going to transfer over to your deadlift? Come on, of course it is. 100% it is. Your hamstrings and glutes are going to be so much bigger, but again, it requires you need to back off. It's a bit of a mentality shift. It's not always the instant gratification of lifting the heaviest weight possible off the floor. You actually have to go through a little bit of a developmental phase and actually focus on building the deadlift with exercise and variations that are a little bit more tough. But people can't swallow their pride and check the ego and pull back from moving the heaviest weight possible. So that, again, that just holds them back. But that's a topic for another video. Again, them two movements, stiff legs and Romanian deadlifts. If strength goals are your main focus, they're going to help build your conventional deadlift anyway. So for me, it's a no-brainer to actually include these anyway. So let me give you an example of what I mean by this. Now, this is my personal. This happened to me. This is where I was at. So we go back a year ago. I've got videos on Twitter. I've deadlifted over 600 pounds in competition. I would have been good for more. I've got a video on Twitter of I deadlifted 245 kilo for 6. So that's where I was at with my deadlift. Now, let's say I'm trying to get as jacked as possible and I'm doing sets of 6 on deadlift. I will come into the gym, right? Let's say I'm doing my conventional deadlift workout. I will come in. Now, it would take me about 20 minutes, 25 minutes to warm up to hit that 240 for 6. You have to come in, whatever sort of preparation work I have to do, and whether it be some planks, whatever, 5-10 minutes of work. Again, that's the topic for another video. You start off with the barbell, 60 kilo, 100 kilo, 140, 180, 220. So to actually climb that ladder and get up to that first working set, again, that can take 20-25 minutes. If you're not that strong, you can come in and have 1 or 2 warm-ups and you're good to go. It doesn't work like that when you're strong. So I'd hit 240 for 6 for my first set, okay, and then I'd have to drop the load. I remember these workouts, I was taking about 8 to 10 minutes rest between sets, because that's how neurologically demanding and fatiguing it is when you're lifting this amount of weight for the sets and reps. It's fatiguing. So if to get these 3 sets done, that was taking me about 40, 45 minutes, 50 minutes. That's a long time just to complete 3 sets, right? And not only that, after I'd done those 3 sets, I was so neurologically wiped out, and you just feel so beat down and fatigued after that, because you put so much energy and focus into hitting that top set and your back downs and being locked in. You put so much energy into that. By the time you've done 50 minutes of deadlifts, your back work after that, or hamstring work, so let's say pull-ups, chest supported rows, hamstring curls, whatever it may be, you're already going into them extremely fatigued and extremely beat down, and sometimes the stimulus that you put into them sets, it's not as good as it could be, because you're suffering from a little bit of fatigue. Now that, it doesn't matter how hardcore or how tough you think you are, that will affect you when you get that strong. It makes a difference. So what am I doing now? As I say, I don't do conventional deadlifts. I'm doing stiff leg deadlifts. Now this is an example of the session that I done today, right? I done 195 kilo for 6, 180 for then 2 back downs or sets of 6. Now I can do that, and obviously it's still difficult and it's still fatiguing, but it's not as bad as this. I can still go on with I get this done and I don't feel as bad after I've done this. It doesn't take me as long to warm up to the top sets. It doesn't take me as long to get the 3 sets done, because it's just not as neurologically fatiguing. And then once I'm done this, I can then go into my pull-ups, pull-downs, chest supported rows, whatever I'm doing, and I still feel good to go. I can still put a good amount of energy into those sets, because I'm not as neurologically wiped out. Now, if I'm trying to get as jacked as possible and build the biggest package overall in terms of, my back musculature, hamstrings, glutes, this second option is going to be the way to go, because right now I don't have any plans to step on a platform. I'm not going to use a big chunk of my training economy to do this now, just to stroke my ego and think that I'm hardcore. It's fucking stupid. So this is why I'm doing that, and you need to take into account the big picture when it comes to your overall programming and your exercise selection. What is your main goal? And again, hopefully this video helps you understand. So just to finish off, understand your reasoning behind your exercise selection. Do not just follow something because someone on the internet, someone on Twitter or Instagram, YouTube, someone has told you to do an exercise. Don't just follow it blindly. Does it make sense for you? Does it make sense for your biomechanics? Does it make sense for your phase of training that you're in, or what you're trying to achieve? And again, all of this makes a big difference, your exercise selection and what you're trying to do, especially as you get bigger and stronger. You are not messing around with light weights anymore when you're 10 years into the gym. Being 10 years, 12 years into the gym is different than being 1 to 2 years, and this is where the nuance gets lost on the internet. People don't like to talk about this stuff, but it's just different 1 to 2 years than a decade deep, and it makes a big difference in what you're trying to do. So understand that, take this information on board. I'm going to send this video to anyone who ever asks me about conventional deadlifts and is it a good exercise, is it bad, should I do it, should I not. I'm just going to point everyone in this direction, because I've went over the big main talking points and what you need to know about whether you want to pick to do conventional deadlifts. So this is all you need to know. Alright, so any questions? If anyone's got any other video ideas, just let me know. Drop them down below, any comments. And I'll talk to you all in the next one.